Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Mark Walmsley is a branding and marketing expert and the founder of the Arts and Culture Network. He says, if you want to be considered the most important person in the room when you're networking, then make everyone you speak to feel like they are. Thank you very much for being my guest on the podcast today, Mark.
I'm delighted, Liz. Thank you so much. I know we've had several conversations, but this is a real treat. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, I've been looking forward to having a proper chat with you. So you're a branding and marketing consultant and the founder of a network, which we will come back to in a bit. But I wanted to talk about your background first. What did you study? What did you want to be when you were younger?
I studied percussion at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in the early 80s, having started to hit saucepans with utensils at the age of 7. And I graduated in 86 and fully intended to spend my life as a freelance orchestral percussionist. So,
right.
It didn't go quite to plan, but
No.
I had 12 years or so playing the triangle in the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra.
How easy is it to get freelance work of that kind of nature?
It's always difficult because there are quite often many more people able to do the job than are needed. But for example, I was one of 3 percussionists accepted during my year at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama from about 60 applications.
Yeah.
Which came as a delight and a surprise. But I think increasingly people are freelancing. And so most of the talent is in the freelance pool. Unless you're very fortunate and are the timpanist in the London Symphony Orchestra, as a good friend of mine is, then it's somewhat precarious, and it's difficult in London as well because most cities have 1 symphony orchestra. We have 5. So on the face of it, that makes it easier to get a job in the capital, but that's 5 times more concerts that need to be filled. So
So at what point did you decide, okay, I'm going to move away from hitting things and do something else?
I love that. I read Cain and Abel by Jeffrey Archer when I was at college and got the business bug from that book. I've since had a chance to thank him for that. Lovely. But I thought, well, I could be a wonderful musician and it's great fun and I love playing and being paid for it would be great. But unless I'm Elton John, I'm not going to perhaps do as well financially as I'd like to. For example, I think it's the case that the equivalent job in an orchestra in Germany pays something like 3 times as much as it does in the UK. Yeah. So I was social secretary at the student union at my music college, and I happened to be, I'd read Cain and Abel and thought, well, what would I do if I was going to start a business? And there I was sitting amidst lots of young musicians. I thought, I'll start a music agency. And so I was just in the process of doing that when the phone rang, when I was in the student union office. And I was the only one there, so I answered the phone, and it was someone from Estee Lauder. And they wanted a harpist to play on their promotion stand on the ground floor in the cosmetics department at Harrods for the 2 weeks on the run up to Christmas. And I said, I can find you somebody, but I charge a 15% commission. They said, yes, that's fine. So I booked it. I thought I'd better go in on the first day. And while I was watching the harpist start, Mohammed Al-Fayed came into the department with his 4 bodyguards. This was back in the, late 80s. And he went over and spoke to her, and she pointed at me, standing over the other way, and he came over to me and said, I gather you've arranged this music for this promotion. I said, yes, sir. And he said, come up to my office, please. And so I went up, and he said, I love live music and I love the fact that we've got it on the ground floor. So I'm going to ask all of the companies who have a promotion for 2 weeks on the ground floor to include some live music and to book it through you.
Oh, wow.
And that was the start of a 10-year contract organising all the entertainment at Harrods. So I was very, very fortunate. I was still playing and touring and teaching, but that really took over for 10 or 15 years. And then in 93, I sent my first email message and waited a week for a reply. And taught myself web design in 94, designed the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra's first website in 95. It got 4 stars in a magazine, and Lloyds Bank's first website only got 3 stars. So I thought I'll start a web design agency.
Yeah.
So I did. That grew to 16 people, and I sold that in 2008. And so it was really music into entertainment and events into digital. That's the story of my early career.
Right. So tell me about your current business.
Well, the Arts and Culture Network is an entirely accidental. I've been very fortunate in that respect in my life. But I was an early adopter of LinkedIn, and I got a message when they hit 1 billion users. I got a message from them saying, "Thank you. You were one of our first 100,000 users."
Right.
And as a result of that, I've got quite a good following on LinkedIn. And
so your network's huge on LinkedIn, isn't it? Huge.
Yeah, I think it's just tipped over 30,000 followers.
Yeah.
When in 2009 they announced that you could start a group, so I started the Arts and Culture Network group on LinkedIn in 2010 and promptly forgot all about it. It grew on its own. As we were approaching lockdown, I realised there were 18,000 members all over the world, none of whom had spoken, met, corresponded, or collaborated. So I thought, well, we're all used to Zoom now. Perhaps I should host some networking events on Zoom for everybody, which we started. And then it just exploded. And we now have 152,000 members across 8 arts and culture LinkedIn groups. And I still host a series of networking events, and we've had some lovely success stories of people being hired during 5-minute meetings, people starting intercontinental companies together to support emerging musicians, and it's been a joy, but it was completely accidental.
So when you first set this network up and you said you then forgot about it, were things happening within that network without you noticing?
Yes, but it wasn't highly engaged because I wasn't monitoring posts, or I wasn't posting, or I wasn't letting everybody in quite as promptly as I ought to. But that changed when that as my side hustle became my main hustle, probably 4 years ago now. And my superpower seems to be making useful connections for people, and my passions are music, arts, and culture. So it's a great place to be.
Yeah. So it's been going for a long time now, but only in its current format since the pandemic, really. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's when it got its website. I was running it effectively pro bono for a while because it was just such good fun seeing all of these people connecting in the art world and culture and heritage. But I then realised, well, look, this is taking up so much of my time. My brand and marketing consultancy time was being impinged upon. So we started a very low-level full membership program at £10 a month only. And that's how we're funded. I want it to remain independent. So we have no sponsors, advertisers, shareholders, or grant-making bodies directing our future. So decidedly independent.
Yeah. So tell me about those early meetings then, when we'd gone into lockdown and you thought, I can make use of Zoom here and get some of these people actually talking to people. What were those first meetings like?
Well, shortly before I started them, I attended an event which was a random speed networking event where you join for an hour, you have 6 or 7 5-minute meetings with people at random, with a view to finding out if you can help.
Yeah.
And so I effectively adapted that model. So people come along, I say hi, we do the breakout rooms at random. I say, please play nicely, please share the 5 minutes equally, please adopt a giver's gain philosophy here and carry on the conversation later. And I don't know about you, but when Zoom started to be used for meetings and webinars, and somebody would say, come to our 4-hour webinar, my heart would sink.
Yeah.
So I've kept it to an hour.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's very sensible. So how has it grown since the pandemic then, in terms of numbers of people in the network and numbers of meetings that you're holding?
Well, I think people in LinkedIn back in the day used to be, here's my CV, give me a job in a bank. But over the last 4 or 5 years, people working in our sector, the arts and culture and entertainment sector, have embraced LinkedIn significantly, because many of the people I connect with now have very few connections, which rather suggests they've only just joined. So that helped enormously. Also, I think McKinsey published a paper last year suggesting that community was the big marketing idea of this decade. And here we are halfway through it, and I think they're right, and we're riding that wave.
Yeah.
And also, something like 80% of opportunities in the arts and culture sector start with a referral these days. And for that to work for you, you need to be a member of a mutually supportive community with effectively a part-time sales force out there for you.
Yeah.
So that's how that works. But the meetings, I do a taster session of 30 minutes every Tuesday at 6 p.m. GMT UK time. And that's proving popular as an opportunity for people to learn a little bit more about how it works.
Yeah.
And we do 2 monthly meetings now. So on the, I think it's on the first Thursday of the month, we do lunchtime in Europe. And on the third Thursday of the month, we do, it's global. So it's kind of 6 p.m. for us, so that our US colleagues can join. And then we have 2 face-to-face meetings. One is in London at the Royal Society of Arts on the last Friday afternoon of every month. And that's quite fun, because people say, oh, aren't you tall? Because we've only seen each other from the waist up. And then we've just started on the 16th of December last month. We had our first face-to-face networking event in New York, which was a delight and a surprise, and really quite humbling, because I joined on FaceTime.
Yeah.
They were in Bobby Van's bar in Manhattan, and there were 16 people there, all of whom knew me, but none of whom knew each other.
Right.
So that was a delight to sit in rural, leafy Riverside, England, and realise that thousands of miles away there are people meeting and getting on with their careers and their work without me being there. So that was a delight. We're doing another one on Valentine's Day at the Lincoln Center.
Right.
So and then we'll start Los Angeles later in the year.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds fantastic. So you mentioned that it's £10 a month to be a member. Presumably people can come along and try it for free, can they?
Well, the events are all free.
Right.
But I was very keen to keep that at an entry level that would support students and those not currently in work. And that's 2 or 3 cups of coffee in the West End of London each month. It's not a huge amount, but as our motto is, a little from many means a lot to one, because we donate as much as we can of that membership revenue. Yeah. And we'll continue to do so as we grow. But it comes with 4 primary benefits, that membership. The first is an interview with me that we promote widely. The second is a member matchmaking session in which I share the details of 100 really useful people from the community. Yeah. And that's working well. One of our members sat for that with me recently, and I sent her 70 names. She connected on LinkedIn with 50 of them. 10 of them agreed to meet, and 2 are now clients of her creative coaching business. So that's good. I can also nominate our full members for fellowship at the Royal Society of Arts, and that's heavily discounted if I do. and I make my brand and marketing advice available to those members when they need it as well. So yeah,
brilliant.
It's been described as a no-brainer.
Yeah. So tell me about some of the success stories from the networking.
I think my favourite one was, Ella's one about finding 2 new clients was great.
Yeah.
But my favourite one was Anjali. She joined us from Connecticut for a networking session on Zoom. She was studying there from India, and she was 48 hours away from having to fly back to India to her old life because her visa was expiring.
Yeah.
The only thing that would have saved her having to leave was a job offer, and she got one in one of her 5-minute meetings.
Amazing.
And they're still working together in Boston.
Yeah.
She's a very talented arts administrator.
Yeah, fantastic. So tell me about some of the kinds of people that are members. What kinds of careers do they have?
Well, it's lovely because I explain when people ask. It's for professionals, practitioners, supporters, and enthusiasts, really. So for those people who work on or around arts organisations, or as freelancers, as visual artists, performance artists, literary artists, and GLAM as well, galleries, libraries, archives and museums. So, and really anyone who can support people working in the arts. So we have specialist social media professionals who might not consider themselves to be artists themselves, but they offer a service that we need.
Yeah.
And so it's a nice balance between those who are doing it and those who are helping people do it.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
But we're getting around 150 new members in our LinkedIn group every day at the moment. So and it's a broad church. So, but we're what I'm very pleased about is that the arts and culture sector is the best place to save the world. We don't depend on language to the same extent as other industries do. We not only do we accept difference, we celebrate it.
Yeah.
And we're borderless for that reason, inclusive and extremely diverse.
Yeah.
So it's a real open, independent community.
Yeah. And have you got any tips for networking, especially in the sort of culture and arts sector?
Oh, how long have you got? So yes, if it's the case that 80% of new opportunities tend to start with a referral, it makes sense to treat networking with renewed respect, both online and offline in person. One of the things I try and abide by is, if you want to be considered the most important person in the room, make everyone you speak to feel like they are, and that works for me. I try also not to let people know what I do too early in a conversation.
Yeah.
It's not always easy when you're networking, but I found that if I can do that, I can start the process of getting to know someone and for them to get to know me and hopefully like me and trust me before they pigeonhole me.
Yeah.
So that's often a worthwhile tactic. And somebody once asked me, I lecture on networking, and I'm doing a talk at Oxford University in March called "Who the Hell Do They Think You Are?" And one of the anecdotes I tell is that I was asked by a student, actually, and they were training some students on networking. They said, "What would you do, Mark, if you turned up at a networking event offline, in person, and the only other person there was a young lady helping herself to coffee? How can you can't ignore them because you're the only two people there,
Yeah.
but how can you make it not creepy?" And I said, well, I would walk up to her and I'd say, "I'm terribly sorry, I hope you don't mind me asking, but I love the coat that you're wearing. My wife would adore that. Would you mind if I asked you where you got it?" And in one sentence, I've done 3 things. I've not told her what I do, which is what most people do when they start a conversation. I've reassured her that I'm married and I'm not hitting on her. And I'm complimenting her for her dress sense. So it's little things like that that can make a big difference. And it's, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use
Yeah.
them in proportion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for sharing your tips with us and all the information about the network. If people are interested in joining, what is the best place for them to do that and best place to find you?
If you search Arts and Culture Network on Google, you can't miss us. And then it's the join page on the website, which lists the benefits. And the same thing at LinkedIn. If you search for Arts and Culture Network on LinkedIn, you'll find our 8 groups quite prominently.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best way to find us. We do have activity on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, but LinkedIn is our manor.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, thank you very much for being my guest. I've really enjoyed our chat.
Liz, this has been lovely. Thank you so much. It's always a delight to meet you and chat with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.